When I was a kid, a boy told me he'd found a secret route in Pokémon Diamond where he caught a Pokémon called Ninja. I mean, there was apparently a whole new deck's worth of Pokémon there, but the one that always stuck in my memory for some reason was this Ninja. I thought maybe he came across Ninjask and was reading its name wrong, but no, he was adamant there was a Pokémon called Ninja that was like a ball kind of guy. I don't know. You can't even find Ninjask in the wild in Diamond and Pearl anyway. I didn't really believe him, but there was a part of me that thought, what if? After all, I knew there were secret Pokémon hidden in the game that couldn't be caught, that Nintendo wouldn't even tell you existed, being saved for future events. Even though the coolest event was never actually properly released. Seriously, listen to that Hall of Origin music and tell me there aren't untold secrets hidden in here. Of course, when this happened in 2007 or something, Pokémon had already existed for a decade, and while I didn't know it at the time, urban legends and literal playground rumours like this had been part of its DNA since its inception with Red and Green.
And this is going to be one of the hottest selling toys for the holidays. This is a talking Pikachu.
Pokémon was such an immediate success when it came westward in 1998 that it's easy to forget its initial 1996 release of Red and Green in Japan kind of flew under the radar. By the time its unusually long development was finished, the Game Boy was very nearly 7-year-old hardware at practically the end of its life. Pokémon Red and Green didn't launch to fanfare, and instead took a few months to pick up steam based on word of mouth. And at the core of that word of mouth were rumours. Rumours that hidden somewhere in the game, beyond the 150 monsters that were advertised, there was another, elusive Pokémon that nobody knew how to find. Mew. Sure, there were rumours describing supposed processes for catching Mew, like maybe it's in Bill's secret garden or the grass outside Pallet Town. Some were crazy wild goose chase guides, like, oh, if you purposely faint all your Pokémon on the SSN, you can skip the scene where it sails away, meaning you can come back later when you have Surf, revealing a secret area that through normal play you'd never even know existed, where there was this strange out-of-place truck with a graphic not used anywhere else in the game. Like, yeah, right, sure there. Oh, there it is. Yeah, we all know now there's no Mew under the truck, but the fact that the secret truck that you'd never see normally is actually real gave credibility to the rumour. So much of it is true, surely this truck has to do something. No one actually knows where this Mew under the truck myth originated. It's like it just appeared suddenly on playgrounds around the world, like that weird S. These early Pokémon games had a number of weird quirks and visuals that suggest there's more than meets the eye, which did wonders for the facilitation of myths. Mew, however, was a rumour that would become reality. 2 months after the game's released, CoroCoro magazine released its May issue. The May issue comes out in April, don't worry about it, and had a bombshell announcement. Mew was real, and if you were very lucky, you could get your hands on it. This is pretty standard for the series now, but at the time this was super fresh. Mew was announced as a newly discovered mythical Pokémon, and I suppose mythical actually was an apt term, that only 20 readers would actually win. This is such great marketing. They admit the existence of the secret Pokémon that even Nintendo didn't know about initially, but by releasing it in such small numbers it retains its mythical status, and by confirming this rumour, Pokémon word of mouth spreads like wildfire, the floodgates were opened on rumours and, of course, sales. This was pretty much the inciting incident for Pokémon's mass popularity in Japan. Soon, Red and Green were selling 4 times as many copies in a week as they initially did in a month. Pokémon had organically grown into a monster through a rapidly evolving new type of folktale, the video game urban legend.
A hit TV show, a Game Boy game, and loads of other cool things that are about to take America by storm!
Pokémon's eventual English release 2.5 years later wasn't in exactly the same order. In Japan, after the runaway success of the Game Boy games, which was so good they extended the life of the console itself, it was spun out into an immense franchise with merchandise, a card game, and of course an anime series in 1997. In America though, this anime actually aired its first episode before the game released. The first tease a whole new demographic got into the world of Pokémon was with a tease of a monster they wouldn't even be able to find in the games they were about to play. The series felt more fluid then. Before strictly regimented generations were established, it felt like there really could just be more Pokémon hiding away. Mew was just the first, and while the new American audience were equally mystified and captivated by Mew, they were also theorizing about Ho-Oh and Togepi and Peekaboo.
Tonight, the information superhighway and one of its main thoroughfares. an online network called Internet.
So, Pokémon wasn't the only new hotness in the 90s. Some households were connecting to the information superhighway, the series of tubes, the new frontier of human communication and knowledge known as the Internet. But Web 1.0 wasn't the same internet we know now. It was kind of static. Pages needed manual updating, plus it was significantly less centralized than today. Before everyone and everything was gathered onto a handful of advertiser-friendly-ish sites, it was a distinct place you would have to go to, rather than the omnipresent, always-on, cloud-based nightmare of today. The burgeoning internet was an alluring wild west of information, where you might find literally anything, for better and for worse. Before the internet, you might have vaguely known that some of your favorite cartoons were actually made in Japan, piecing together information from magazines and whatnot, but never before were you able to find so much information about this anime thing, even if the fan translation's interpretations could be a little off. And there was so much to learn about Pokémon. Japan had had a 2.5-year head start, of course, so while English speakers were just leaving Pallet Town, Japan had seen over 60 episodes and a full movie, with loads of Pokémon that couldn't yet be found in the games. These turned out to be teasers for the upcoming sequels, Gold and Silver, but to a kid not in the know just looking up their new special interest online, this game that just came out, seeing these weird creatures that aren't acknowledged anywhere in the English marketing, you can't blame them for thinking these must be in red and blue somewhere. And of course, because of that not always on thing, if you wanted to tell your friends about it right away, you'd have to disconnect the internet and ring them up on the landline, probably getting an earful for the bill in the process. The information spread slower, less directly, creating the perfect environment for tales to spread and actually stay in the public consciousness longer, rather than fizzling out near immediately once everybody's seen everything there is to know about it online. These second-hand facts would inevitably get twisted, whether deliberately or not, until these unreleased, untranslated Pokémon became the Pokégods, with legends of their own. How you could catch Buru, or Kirehana, or of course, evolve your Raichu into Pika-Blue. And by the time the movie actually came out in English, the sheer confidence of titling it the first movie, by the way, there was a whole canon of Pokégods, not just from these Gold and Silver Pokémon, but born purely from the imagination of kids devoted to the most attention-grabbing toy of the 90s. Some of them were obvious, Mew 3, further evolutions for the 3 starters. I always name my Blastoise Rainer in any game with Mega Evolution. Some, though, were totally original, names like Millennium, Doomsday, and fucking Anthrax. Yeah, a lot of them were edgy as hell. From our post-Five Nights at Freddy's world, kids gravitating to media with horror undertones is a trend that seems obvious, but you can kind of trace its evolution back through the internet age, with creepy and unsettling things always being imagined where there shouldn't be, often in video games. Probably something about the interactivity. Games inherently break the fourth wall with you being directly involved with the events and actions of the characters. It's a great medium for horror. It makes sense that a lot of creepypastas were based around games, even Pokémon specifically. They especially seem to center around single-player games, or games that are supposed to be multiplayer but for whatever reason aren't. Isolation can be peaceful, but it can also be dreadful. Maybe that's why it seems to go hand in hand with Pokémon. It was a game you were playing together, yet individually. You could trade and battle with your friends, but then you'd take the game home and play by yourself in the dead of night when you should have been asleep, the unlit screen barely illuminated by some cheap worm light, and your imagination would wander. What if I could catch Bulbasaur in that inaccessible grass? How do I get into that clearly open space behind Bill's house? The graphical and design limitations only encouraged this thinking. The harsh tones of Lavender Town, barely audible with the volume turned way down, but still making your hairs stand on end. This is the new technology, a new frontier. You could find anything. Who's to say there isn't a ghost in this machine? This all kinda links to Pokemon's original concept in a roundabout way. Series creator Satoshi Tajiri was inspired by Japan's urban expansion paving over the wild land where he used to hunt for bugs, and wanted to give the children of today the ability to catch creatures like he once did. The first games are set 20 minutes into the future, with themes of technological innovation and expansion versus the natural world, asking if the two can coexist and what they can do for each other. It's incredibly fitting then that the game would finally release into a world on the edge of one of the greatest technological revolutions of the modern today, one that would for the first time put the mass sharing of information into the hands of anyone willing to learn how to write HTML. Kinda like how you'd play the game separately but still have a sense of community through trading and battling each other when you meet up. And through sharing information, something they've tried to keep going in the current games. We forget this, what with being able to just Google the answers, but the point of weird evolutions like Runerigus and Basculegion is that their obscure methods will inevitably be found by an army of kids who can then spread the rumour, the same way Missingno was found. Missingno? Missingno?
Missing number.
Anyway, I love the theme of duality, the fear of losing the natural world contrasted with the excitement for a new age, but also the anxiety that comes with the changing times. The Cold War was over and humanity looked optimistically toward the year 2000, despite some technological anxieties, hopeful that it would usher in a new age where everyone was less separated and divided than before.
Sorry folks, this apparently can't last.
There's an adage I see a lot online about the first generation of Pokémon games that their code is more like a loose collection of glitches that just happens to look like a game from the right angle. But I think this is kind of an unfair take. We tend to forget how ambitious these games were, like most games on the Game Boy looked like this. And yet Pokémon was this whole-ass RPG with a big world and 150 playable characters. I won't pretend it's a bug-free game, like, yeah, moves with perfect accuracy are a lie and crap like this can happen, but generally you have to really go out of your way with some super specific steps to really break the game open. The glitches that are going to happen naturally in a normal playthrough are things you probably won't even notice or would even think are deliberate. Like, I always thought psychic types being immune to Ghost was just something that got changed later rather than a bug. I guess I never saw that anime episode where Ash goes to catch a Haunter to beat Sabrina. He dies in that episode, isn't that weird? Then there's the old man glitch and its associated Pokemon Missingno. Maybe the most iconic glitch in any game ever is the result of a series of minor oversights that individually shouldn't matter, all interacting in an interesting way if the player happens to take a hyper-specific series of actions that surely no player ever would. Holy shit, what a run-on sentence. Basically, the player name needs to be temporarily changed for one scene, so it gets stored in an area of memory that isn't being used at that moment, which happens to be an encounter table. And then by fast traveling to the only map in the game with encounters but no encounter table, your name gets read as Pokemon data, letting you catch all kinds of unintended creatures. And if it weren't for this single strip of tiles that this applies to, storing your name in the encounter table is actually a really intelligent use of the Game Boy's very limited resources. They were working with 8K of RAM, you make things fit however you can. You can see why this didn't get fixed in bug testing. It's already unusual behavior to rewatch this catching tutorial when you're far enough in the game to have fly, and then you have to immediately go up and down this single row of tiles when even a single step to the right would load Route 20 and correct the bugged state. It's so specific, even for a bug tester trying to break the game. So of course, it was discovered less than a year after release. Professional QA has nothing against an army of children. So you follow these specific steps, you run into a glitch Pokemon with a weirdly coherent name, and you get rewarded for the effort with over 100 Master Balls or whatever. He gave credence to all those other wild stories because something like this was real. The positive effect of the item duplication meant you had a reason to seek it out, even if you were scared it was a virus or something that would destroy your game. It didn't help that it can literally look like a skeleton or a ghost. I wouldn't be surprised if this sprite quirk alone helped inspire a genre of creepypasta. That and other less coherent glitch Pokemon like yeah, I don't blame people for thinking this game is haunted. It goes further than just Gen 1. A lot of the behind-the-scenes parts of these games are weirdly coherent, like getting out of bounds in Gen 4, you find this endless expanse of void, or trees if you got here with a walk-through walls cheat, which has a specifically programmed name, Mystery Zone. It stretches all the way through all the empty space between the normal areas of the game. It had always been there, just out of your reach. It even has its own music, not used anywhere else in the game, this early unfinished version of one of the root themes. Perfect for those who think beta content is creepy somehow. Or if you have a corrupt Pokemon, it can turn into a bad egg with super weird behavior. Anyone remember monochrome Pokemon? I don't think they were real, probably just a texture glitch, but I feel like they were a big mystery for a few weeks at the start of Gen 6. Anyway, for every true rumor and guide were about 100 fake ones. Like when the real Nintendo website told you how to evolve Lickitung into Luigi or Dragonite into Yoshi. That gets attributed to Nintendo Power, but it was actually Expert Gamer. I hadn't heard of this magazine before, but oh shit, Bomberman Fantasy Race? Both of these published fake tricks were April Fool's pranks, but random people making up guides online didn't care what day of the year it was. So, when a few years later somebody actually worked out a complex super glitch that let you catch Mew, Nobody believed it. The verifiable step-by-step guide to do it literally looks like an unverified game FAQs post designed to waste your time. I think a feeling that is lost these days is that technology, games, the young internet felt like this unexplored wilderness that anything could exist within, before widespread data mining, before the centralization of everything onto a small group of websites where official sources are so easy to find. These games, in the minds of kids who didn't understand exactly how it all worked, felt like windows into worlds where Peekaboo was out there, where L was real. The pixelized and low poly graphics of these early games meant there was more work for the imagination to do. Every little piece of dialogue and design was a springboard for whatever you could dream up, an implication that there was something more hidden behind the scenes. Super Mario 64 is a game with tons of legends like this. This warning sign about a bottomless pit that'll kill you being written in the same style as a level name. This spooky forest outside Big Boo's haunt when you're supposed to be in the courtyard grass. A castle being seemingly bigger on the inside, with enormous secret spaces like the aquarium and slide apparently all being within its walls. I think this was probably exacerbated by it being a console game you'd exclusively play by yourself, so that information delay was even more extreme. No way were you carrying your Nintendo 64 and heavy-ass tube TV into school. That said, when the game got re-released with a bunch of new content on the DS, even more rumours were stoked, with stuff like the fourth door and the character select room supposedly hiding Waluigi, or this Toad telling you about an ally with info. I think I actually have the answer to this one, and I can't believe I haven't seen it online anywhere before, just wild speculation about it meaning some unseen character, or even a play on words that it's an ally with info. No, I'm pretty sure it's just a mistranslation. So in the English version we know, the Toad tells you about the mirror room, saying to look for two things. First, anything not reflected in the mirror, and second, this enigmatic ally with info. But the original Japanese version is a little different. The first part is the same, pay attention to the things that aren't reflected in the mirror, but that one line at the end that sparked all the speculation is totally different, and actually maps to an entire screen of text in the Japanese version. And another thing, some of us say they saw a transparent person in that room. Huh? How did they see them? No, I'm not doing a Toad voice. So how did all of that turn into an ally with info? Well, because the text in this game is written entirely in kana without kanji, it gets pretty easy to misread things. And I think what happened is, Tomei, transparent or clear, got misread by the translator as Domei, alliance. So a transparent person becomes an allied person, an ally. With kanji text, these words couldn't look any more different, but with just their pronunciations written out in kana, the only difference is the tiny dokuten. You can see how this got missed. Anyway, I'm sure I don't need to tell you about the whole trend of conspiracy theories and creepy stories coming from this game. You've seen the ICEBERG images, and the hours-long videos discussing every entry in the images. I think one reason these took off so hard is because they're a way to turn back the clock and recapture that wonder, that feeling that this is a whole living world where things actually exist below its surreal, dreamlike surface. I don't think it's a coincidence that this stuff got popular in 2020, when everybody was shut in with lots of time to be nostalgic and seek escapism. But what I think is really cool is that with game development being so democratized and easy to pick up these days, there's no shortage of fan games, ROM hacks, and even completely original works inspired by the theories of mysteries and friendly-seeming games. The most obvious example of this is B3313, an insanely comprehensive ROM hack of Mario 64 that remakes practically the entire game to resemble the early development builds of the game seen in magazines and shown off at Nintendo's Shoshinkai event in 1995. Builds that, according to the ICEBERG charts, could supposedly modify themselves to suit the tastes of each individual player. Builds for which every copy was personalized. B3313 takes this kind of silly idea and runs with it, adding literal mountains of new content, some of it based on the icebergs and conspiracy theories, a lot of it totally original. Some of the new areas are fun, with really cool music, remixing tracks in the original game and other Mario games, with actual levels that you can really believe could have been part of the real game. Others are just a little off, feeling like they were reconstructed from memory or something. Seeing these so familiar spaces being just slightly wrong can be disorienting, and you might not even be able to place why, maybe even doubting your own memory. Maybe you played the real game so long ago that you forgot it was just always like this. And then some of the other areas feel lonely. Like you're looking directly at the reconstructed memory, this barely recollected feeling of what could have been. This unfinished world, frozen forever in a state of incompletion. It doesn't help that the ROM hack actually incorporates that whole every copy is personalized thing, changing aspect of your game seemingly at random. so good luck looking up why a certain weird thing is happening when no two people will have the exact same experience, and God help you if you ever lose your hat. There is a comprehensive wiki for the hack, but just trying to figure out where you are might be a fool's errand when you realize the immense scale of the game, and it's a hazy maze of nonsensical connections and loops to get to anywhere specific. And while some locations feel lonely, some feel distinctly like you're not alone. I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror game, rather atmospheric, but the feeling of unease it can create when it wants to is palpable. It even changes certain aspects of the game if you're playing at night, with a unique scare in one area. I didn't even know an N64 emulator could know what time it is. It all feels so familiar, yet unfamiliar, like something you might really have vaguely remembered playing as a child, but not quite. Memories are ephemeral, easily mistaken things, childhood memories even more so, bending the real into the surreal. You can quite easily gaslight yourself into thinking you have played it before, long ago. It's early in 1998, still winter. The sun has been down for hours, these cold days are so short. You're by yourself in your room, in the dark, as calming rain lashes down on the window. You can't see it through the closed blind, but its faint patter reassures you that it's there. You don't have to worry about anything. You can barely make out the warm, muffled sound of the living room TV through the wall, some talk show or something. The laughter is warm, everything sounds warm. But you're by yourself in your room, and you're exploring the castle, lost in your own world that you could almost reach out and touch. Its huge spaces don't make sense. Like, how can it be bigger on the inside than the out? How every door somehow transports you to a faraway corner, but this just washes over your barely lucid mind. Really, you should be getting to bed. You're tired and you feel like you might have a fever coming on, but you want to keep playing, just for a little while. What happens if I run in the hallways? Why do some of the stages feel distinct to the others, like they're less like real worlds and more square? Why do they make you feel this sense of yearning, this unease like something has been lost? You want to keep hunting for mysteries undiscovered until sleep takes you. Right on the border of wake and sleep, this hypnagogia, this witching hour of consciousness, you don't realize that this isn't even the same world anymore. It's just a hazy memory now. Even as you experienced it, it only ever felt like a hazy memory. Even if you remembered anything specific that you saw and told someone about it, you'd know that they'd never believe you. This game's been out over a year, and if there was anything like that in it, we'd know. But there are some unlikely things hidden away in games that were just as impossible to prove. Going back to Pokémon, stuff like Mirage Island in the Gen 3 games. This entire island that was the only place to catch wild Wynaut, the only place to find the super rare lychee berry, that would just unceremoniously appear in an unassuming area of ocean if incredibly rare circumstances were met, only to vanish again the next day. So even if you happened to check this random route on the day it happens to appear, which to be fair, the game does give you a clue that it exists if you talk to everyone in the nearby town, by the time you tell someone and show them, it might already be gone. It's so rare and non-reproducible that you can't just tell them to try it themselves like you could with Missing though. Even having proof of something sometimes isn't enough to make people believe. The first sightings of the whale in Animal Crossing were written off as fake for years before its mechanics were actually understood. And then on the other side of the coin, there's rumours that do have apparent proof, but are totally not true anyway. Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green supposedly had an anti-piracy measure where a sailor would just say out of nowhere,
"By the way, if you like this game, buy it or die."
And not only were there screenshots to prove it, you could pirate a copy of the game and the message would really be there. Except it turns out the ROM that everyone would download had been tampered with and had the message added in by whoever first uploaded it. GBA piracy was bigger than I feel like we realize, and the fact that the game had its scripts modified so soon after release is pretty cool. Pokemon ROM hacking started early. I think this myth probably got spread so far because it's such a non sequitur, and it's so not child friendly for a Pokemon game that people probably wanted to believe it. This was in like 2004, so way before that recent online trend of creepy anti-piracy. I do kind of get it though. A game doing something it wasn't supposed to like this did kind of creep me out as a kid. Sometimes you can almost be fooled into believing there is something in there. Maybe not so much these days when tech is so ubiquitous, so sanitized, so stagnant, but certainly back when gadgets were more finicky and needed some percussive maintenance once in a while. Before everything was perfect, It was the imperfections that sparked your imagination, both for good and bad. When ghosts hid in low resolutions, when online anonymity meant nobody knew you were a dog. The internet was a place you'd usually visit alone, quite possibly at night because it tied up the phone line. It was practically an optimized environment for seeing things, that creeping feeling of dread in the darkness. It's no wonder then that the turn of the century saw the birth of the creepypasta. What may have started as chain emails spreading urban legends and warning you some ghost kid was going to kill you if you didn't pass it on, quickly codified into a new format of horror story that blurred the line between fiction and reality, author and observer, spread through forum sites with the authors and characters spreading their experience with a haunted Nintendo game or creepy enigmatic website in the same place you'd talk about how much you were looking forward to the return of the king. Ghost stories have always lived on their perceived authenticity. We're drawn to them by that feeling of uncertainty, that reasonable doubt, the thought of what if. Seeing these stories presented in such a matter-of-fact way in a familiar environment can be enough to stir unease, even if you aren't someone who would normally even believe in the supernatural. It only makes sense. These stories traditionally were spread through word of mouth, getting distorted by retellings over time, so what better place for them to live than the biggest gossip space the world had ever seen? Oh, that's why it's called a forum. And a lot of these stories were specifically about technology, and games in particular. Classic creepypastas like Lavender Town Syndrome went beyond the personal account style of many tales and fabricated new stories of the effects of hearing this haunting melody. Most of the people reading it didn't have the knowledge to be searching the Japanese side of the internet to prove it false, and you may even have this little memory in the back of your head of the Pokémon shock when hundreds of kids actually were hospitalized by an episode of the anime, so it feels like it might be believable.
Almost every Japanese child knows Pocket Monsters and its star Pakucho.
Ever dreamed this, man? So this turned out to just be an advertising stunt for an art agency, but the original site definitely feels like a creepypasta, even if it wasn't intended to be one. It borders on insane ramblings, the collected testimonies of the dreams and wild theories and conspiracy theories on what it means for humanity to have this shared unconscious experience. This man's striking appearance, distinct yet presented in this uncanny police sketch style that makes you second guess yourself. Have you dreamed him? He does look familiar somehow. Kinda reminds me of the weird websites and everything going on in Pulse. Yeah, no way could I talk about this stuff without mentioning that movie. It's Kiyoshi Kurosawa's 2001 technophobic fever dream that imagines the internet as a graveyard, full of ghosts and things beyond comprehension, that are starting to bleed into the world of the living more than ever since we built all this infrastructure and started spending more and more of our time in a state between the worlds. Through technological advancement, we've paradoxically built a stagnant world without change, so what difference is there between this life and the life of a ghost? The idea of ghosts literally existing in technology shows up quite a bit in media from around the turn of the millennium. Shout out Denno Coil, where AR glasses mean you can literally exist in both the worlds at once, seeing modern interpretations of yokai living on data servers superimposed into the human world. And then obviously there's the Ring, or Ringu or whatever, which makes excellent use of the idiosyncrasies of VHS visuals, how you can't quite make out the details in the dark. I love the scene where Reiko goes through the tape slowly on a professional machine, trying to figure out what she's even looking at. Why don't machines have jog shuttles anymore? The way it weaves the mechanics of a curse together with the sharing of videotapes is inspired, and it's a story that could only really be told in this brief period when you'd share a video physically on tape. Tech changes so fast that stories centered on it are inherently going to be ephemeral, little preserved windows of a narrow slice of time. The Prince of Wales Inn in Wales, where else, has long been said to be haunted. The original building dates back to the 15th century, and it was the town hall for the village of Kenfig until changing weather conditions forced the residents to abandon the village, which was eventually buried in sand dunes. Over the centuries to come, the town hall building would see many uses, notably as a court, a Sunday school, and, of course, a pub. The building had seen so much that it's no surprise that by the 1980s, rumours had arisen about the inn. They say at night, you can hear things. Voices from the old courtroom, the enthusiastic playing of the old Sunday school organ. Two patrons of the pub, industrial chemist Alan Jenkins and electrical engineer John Mark, had a theory.
If you examine the chemical structure of the rocks of the pub is made of, the silica and the iron cement that binds the silica together could act as a magnetic tape, a recording tape, or a low-grade microchip. So we argued that possibly the walls could absorb sound and give it back out.
This is the stone tape theory. The idea of place memory, that a location or object can become imbued with the energies of the events that happened in and around it as an explanation for hauntings, goes way back. But stone tape theory arose in the late 20th century due to a TV drama in 1972 and offers a seemingly scientific, technological explanation for what this actually is. And look, I know it doesn't stand up to scrutiny at all if you know how a tape recording actually works. You need specifically designed hardware, recording and playback heads that the tape moves linearly along, creating a linear audio track. Like, even if you could encode data onto a tape by screaming loud enough at it, you'd be saturating the entire tape with the entire sound. It's like writing a book by writing every single letter on top of each other. But even with that in mind, I can't shake the discomfort I feel listening to the recording Jenkins and Mark made in the dead of night. I don't believe in this stuff, at least I don't think I do, but I still wouldn't be in any rush to stay there. If I heard that at 3 in the morning, I don't think I could. It's like little fragments of captured time suddenly woken and peered into for a brief moment. Point is, stone tape theory is essentially the idea that what we think of as ghosts and hauntings are actually recordings made accidentally by the environmental conditions coincidentally being just right for the recording and playback of events from the past. It's the belief that ghosts are electronic data. It's not like this was some particularly fringe belief either. Spiritualist beliefs were actually kind of common among inventors, those at the forefront of technological innovation, as well as some authors and generally big names you would expect to be especially scientifically minded. Maybe it's to do with knowing how much you don't know, like the Dunning-Kruger effect. On the subject of scientific thinking, does anyone remember Team Rocket's Rockin'? It was a Pokémon fan site I read a lot as a kid that used the scientific method to explore and document Missing Note. Yeah, this bizarre script comes full circle. It actually started as an info site for Pokémon Live, if anyone remembers that little quirk of early weirdness. Anyway, as the site grew, the webmaster, Mandy, added this section about glitches. It was mostly focused on Pokémon, but there was some stuff from other games too. I think this is where I learned about the Minus World in Mario. I love the way this just sums up human curiosity. There's something messed up in the game, official sources say it can break your save file and force you to start from nothing. Let's catch it! Not that there's anything wrong with that, I'll always respect the quest for knowledge. A lot of what people thought they knew about Missing Note wasn't actually true anyway. Even that official acknowledgement by Nintendo that the only way to fix its graphics scrambling effect was to release it, or if that didn't work, delete your save. But of course, now we know that releasing it doesn't do anything, and you can instead fix the glitches just by looking at the status screen or dex entry of any normal Pokémon. I wonder how many people lost their precious save games over Nintendo's official advice. Scientific exploration like this grounds things, keeps us reminded that at the end of the day, video games are deterministic programs made of code and everything happens for a reason. I know that does take away from the mystery and the vibes, but I honestly think that both can exist at once. I love knowing how things work, and I don't think that outright removes the feeling of wonder and mystery. And some of those early Pokémon rumors actually got validated over time as more information about the development of these games came out. Obviously, some of the so-called Pokégods were just real Pokémon from Gold and Silver, and then the Gold and Silver Space World demo leak had a whole host of removed creatures that never made the final cut. Even the theorized evolution for Raichu that some called Pikaflare turned out to be kinda real when we found out about Gorochu in a 2018 interview. Hey, close enough! The same release that introduced this guy also gave us Mega Darkrai, who I swear resembles this creepypasta-ass dream someone had years ago in more than just its appearance. Not just Pokemon either, Metroid Dread turned out to be real. Anyway, I just really love the old fansite vibes here. All these reader testimonials about their own experiences with Missing Note and other glitches, including some wild speculation and rumors. I didn't know Mysterio was the nickname people used for M. It feels like a close-knit community, personal, in a way that a fucking subreddit just does not. It's like a little group sharing ghost stories in the dark. Not to get all back in my day, but the modern internet, with everything so homogenized and centralized onto a few sites, ironically feels less social and connected than ever. These individual customized sites, all with their own energy and communities, have given way to heavily commercialized walled gardens. Efficient, optimized, and corporate. And I know there's an indie web movement. I know there are people making cool homegrown sites rekindling the fire of GeoCities and Angelfire, but the vast majority of the internet that most people use unfortunately isn't like this. This kinda goes for some popular games now too. Live service game main menu. This oh so prevalent wall of adverts and distractions and overstimulation. And I don't mean all games are worse now, far from it. There are so many games being made now that of course there's still some really good stuff coming out all the time. I only really have this issue with AAA stuff and live service games in particular. But then I don't really play them, so what does it matter to me? You could make the argument that the indie scene is better than it's ever been, and honestly that's where it's at these days. Point is, the game industry has its issues.
So is it any wonder people are afraid of technology? Technology!
I don't want to glorify the past. A lot of big games have never been good, and there's always been cheap stuff that sells gangbusters. Remember movie tie-ins? And that old internet, the so-called Wild West, was not all sunshine and roses. There were some dark corners, and I understand how this intensely moderated world has come to exist, but offloading that moderation to algorithms and AI is nothing short of a disaster. What the hell is this video about? I think for sure there are some big popular games these days that feel less alive than ever, despite all their technological advancements. And I realize that a part of that is just that we know more about them and how they work, but I think there is definitely a current trend in fiction for things to be part of a defined and coherent universe that exists beyond the bounds of the story. I've seen this described as wikification, the idea that every little part of a story needs to be explained and categorized as though it was real, rather than something that exists solely to serve a story. And I'm not saying that world building isn't a valid hobby and that this doesn't have its place. I'm more talking about the glup shito phenomenon. Everything needs a spin-off TV series. We used to wonder what world existed beyond the game area, but now that we just know, it stokes the imagination less. But don't get me wrong, seeing games I thought I knew like this is cool as hell. But that's just the big budget stuff. On the indie scene, one of the biggest genres is a clear rebellion against these trends. Retro horror existing at all is a testament to how people do still want this kind of experience, this less explained journey that you have to piece together yourself, becoming a part of the story yourself, where your imagination has to fill in the gaps of low poly models and crusty textures. For me, that's infinitely more immersive than dynamic horse balls. I have to shout out Shipwreck 64. I kind of pigeonhole mascot horror as being kid-focused jump scare streamer bait, but this one really surprised me. It uses elements of its medium and presentation really well to deliver the horror through this fantastic feeling of unease that just builds and builds. You really feel like you're uncovering something that no person should. And yeah, this kind of game, as well as ARGs, do get dissected and wikified to some extent, but the difference is that for the most part it's all external. Ending explained videos, that sort of thing. It's not usually present in the actual work. Nobody's forcing you to interact with this fandom stuff. I think this trend of horror media masquerading as family-friendly can work very well in the right hands, as rare as that is. Our brains are wired for danger. To a prehistoric human, a split second of inaction over a perceived danger could mean death, so we overcompensate with our defense mechanism, fear. As far as it's concerned, there's no such thing as an overreaction. After all, you're still alive, aren't you? The world we evolved for, the world we are specifically adapted to, no longer exists. But still, we think we see the shadows move. We still think we see white eyes peering out of the dark of a computer screen, no matter how safe we logically know we are. We still imagine. And what imagines more than a developing mind? When you're a child experiencing everything for the first time, everything is a mystery and anything can be true. The world inside this game is bigger than what can be seen in the confines of a Game Boy's dim black and green display. And when anything is real, so too are the things we see in the dark. And so we find things scary that just aren't. Like, I can remember being scared by this one specific episode of the Kirby anime where an asteroid is coming to kill everyone. You know, for kids. But just the vibes in the back half of that story were wild. Everyone just accepting impending doom with as much grace as they could muster. All the townsfolk admitting and apologizing for what they've done wrong so they can face the end with a clear conscience. Even King DDD builds a little playground to give back to the town after having a change of heart from being faced with his own mortality. Everything just tinted red with hellfire the entire time. Kirby has always been a cosmic horror series, huh? Thinking about it, a lot of the things that freaked out tiny me were to do with the end of the world. Once I heard there were theories that a Large Hadron Collider could create micro black holes, never mind that even if it did, they'd evaporate in the blink of an eye, I was convinced that the scientists were dooming us all like in the movies. And no, instead a bird dropped a baguette in the thing and shifted us into the bad timeline. I'm starting to think I was a very troubled youngster. But then, if I didn't find things scary, would I have found them so fascinating and been so drawn to them? I have this really early formative memory of reading this big book of conspiracy theories and unexplained phenomena. The Philadelphia experiment, the Mary Celeste, even spontaneous human combustion and the Pharaoh's curse. These things spooked me. I think I've always been a rational person for as long as I can really remember. I've always understood science to be the process of understanding, so the idea of things existing outside of that sphere, outside of understanding. You can see how I got these brainworms. I think it's good that it spurs curiosity. It's better to be curious than to shy away from what you don't understand and block it all out. I have no idea what that book even was. One day I just never saw it again. I've never been able to find a book that exactly matches my memories of it. And I mean, I'm sure my memory has holes and I've probably combined a few things in my head, but still, in all my looking, and I have looked, I've never found anything that even sparks my recollection the tiniest amount. It's like it was never there. Of course, the rational way to examine these things under the scientific method shows fairly conclusively that they are the product of our minds playing tricks on us, or short-circuiting, or whatever, but we are our minds. If ghosts are just something our minds perceive, something we create through our learned experience and the culture we grow up in, part of the filter we view the world through, it doesn't change that it is the only way we can perceive the world. We can't look at the world from outside ourselves. We categorically cannot observe the universe objectively. We can never be free from the glitches of the biological computer we call ourselves. I didn't say the word liminal a single time in this video. Are you proud?